collegium in every high court. They will come into collegium in the Supreme Court in years to come by. And they will be controlling really for next 10, 15 years. What will happen to the appointment procedure if for everybody to guess? It's going to really result in certainly some of the worst appointments in times to come. So I'm extremely concerned at this
very strong words,
and I don't think judges have really done great service to the Constitution.
Okay, Justice Ashok Ganguly, would you agree that the collegium system as it exists now is not transparent? Secondly, there are always fears that there is, if you have somebody who backs you or endorses you, there is a possibility of a High Court judge getting appointed to the Supreme Court. That the system doesn't really reveal how these decisions are made, and therefore it is essentially flawed. Would you agree that the collegium system has faults? It's not the ideal solution for India?
Well, I agree that the collegium system as it is functioning now needs an improvement. I think that system is not bad, because when you select judges, I am reminded of what was said by the 14th Law Commission. You must consider their capacity and capability. These are the two considerations, not seniority alone. So judges can make the judgment best on the question of a capability and capacity of a judge to be appointed to the highest court or in the High Court. But the question is, in the making of these judgments, we have found that many eminent persons have not come to Supreme Court who should have come. I can give the names right now, not to embarrass anybody. I think our Law Commission Chairman, Justice A.P. Shah, should have come to Supreme Court. I think most of the panelists will agree with me. But he has not come because of something which I don't want to say. Therefore, there are some flaws. That the best part of this judgment is that the judgment has acknowledged the existing collegium system is not free from faults. That's the reason they have invited suggestions from knowledgeable quarters on the 3rd of November. But the other part of the criticism of the judgment, that as a result of this judgment, the sovereignty of the Parliament is being diluted, is totally wrong. Because I tell you, the debate whether Parliament is supreme or Constitution is supreme has been settled long ago by Supreme Court in 65, thereafter in Keshavananda Bharati's case. Look at Article 79 of the Constitution. The Constitution establishes the Parliament. It's a creature of the Parliament. It's a creature of the Constitution. Constitution sets up the Parliament. There is no question of its sovereignty being diluted by the judgment, because judicial scrutiny is one of the basic structure, and therefore the court can look into it and can set it right, even if it is passed by overwhelming majority. This argument is not an argument based on Constitution. The next argument...
Okay, let me put that, sir, to Muhammad Khan, lawyer and spokesperson of the Congress. Muhammad Khan, would you agree with what the Justice is saying over there, that this entire issue of sovereignty doesn't arise at all? The argument is essentially flawed, that there is no linkage between what has happened now and the sovereignty of Parliament.
Vishnuji, there are three very eminent senior advocates on your panel, and I will leave the answering of this question to them. What I would like to say is that if you go asking people as to whether they feel that there should be an improvement in the way we select our judges, I'm certain you will find a unanimity of opinion that there must be. That was the sentiment with which we originally drafted the NJAC bill. Where you will find variance, and here I will of course put this question to Mittal Sahab, where you will find variance is, could the BJP have done something differently? And it was very interesting, you played clips at the very outset of some of our leaders, and I want to go back to what Mr. Moily said. Mr. Moily said, and I'm paraphrasing here, perhaps if they had proceeded with a little bit more grace, the outcome would have been different. I remember when we first drafted the bill, we shared copies of it, and I'm certain Dr. Singhvi will also confirm this. We shared copies with everyone. We consulted the widest possible spectrum of stakeholders. Judges were invited to comment, etc. And no one had any doubts.
No, but are you trying to,
but
Mohammed Khan, are you trying to argue that the BJP has argued poorly in court? That Mukul Rohatgi has not argued effectively in court. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not at all, Vishnu. In fact, I'm certain they had stellar legal counsels and advice in court. What I am trying to say is that politically, perhaps, and this is a question for Mittal Sahab to answer, perhaps they could have done something differently. Perhaps there could have been a better exercise at building consensus. Perhaps judges could have been taken on board from the very outset of the process. You will note that prior to 2014...
No, but Mohammed Khan, where was the lack of consensus in this? It's been passed by 20 state assemblies, let alone the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha.
Vishnu, can I take you to the point of variance?
Why has the Congress belatedly discovered a lack of political consensus? For once there was entire political consensus in this.
Vishnu, if I may. Post May of 2014, you will notice the introduction of a series of amendments. Of course, these amendments were introduced at the behest of this government. And you will note, I would like to draw your attention to two of those amendments specifically. These were not part of the UPA bill, so therefore you cannot attribute them to the UPA. These amendments related to veto powers being granted to 2 members of the body itself. These powers related to reference to the president. We would argue that this was not something perhaps on which consensus was built. Again, we wonder, when these provisions were introduced, was the judiciary taken on board? Because when we prepared our bill, the judiciary did not seem to have any objection with it at that point of time.
Okay,
so the question, I'm only drawing my inference.
All right, Sudhanshu Mittal has been waiting patiently. He wants to come in over here. He disagrees with what you are saying. I think the point that the Congress is trying to make is that there are aspects of the NJAC which their views and their opinion was not adequately sought.
If there was no consensus or if everybody would not have been taken on board, I don't think you could have seen the unanimity with which the Parliament had passed this bill, or you would have seen 20 state governments cutting across political spectrums endorsing it. But I am not getting into this. I have a number of few fundamental questions.
Slightly different. I am not attributing malice to your part.
I'll come down to that. Please, let's not intervene. Let's not intervene. Please, allow me to finish.
Please go ahead. I apologize.
My first thing is, who will make law in this country? I mean, everybody says there is judicial review. Yes, you can test a law against its constitutionality or the legislative intent. But who will make law? Who made the collegium law? The Constitution, as framed by the framers of the Constitution, certainly did not do it. And now since this is the primacy of the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary, look, the independence of judiciary relates to the judicial function of judiciary, not the administrative function of the judiciary. But let me read out a quote.
No one is arguing to the
contrary.
contrary.
What Dr. Abhishek had to say. Allow me to finish.
Our question is slightly different, Mittal Sahab. Our question is as follows.
Allow me to just finish. Just 1 minute. You know, let me read out what Dr. Ambedkar had to say. With regards to the question of concurrence of Chief Justice, it seems to me that those who advocate that proposition seem to rely implicitly both on the impartiality of the Chief Justice and the soundness of his judgment. I personally feel no doubt that the Chief Justice is a very eminent person, but after all, the Chief Justice is a man with all the failings, all the sentiments and all the prejudices which we as...
Mittal Sahab, if you prescribe to this sentiment, then can I ask you, why did you not pursue other judicial reforms?
You made your point. Sudhanshuji, you made your point. Mohammed Khan has to disagrees with you. Go ahead.
Why did you pursue the judicial accountability bill? Why didn't you pursue the judges' inquiry? Those were pillars of judicial reform as well. And if you feel so strongly about
Mohammed Khan, I can't hear all of you all simultaneously. Sudhanshuji, just 1 second. Let him say what he has to say. I'll come back to you. Yes. Mr. Khan, go ahead.
Mittal Sahab, my point is very simple. Judicial appointment was 1 pillar out of 3 that we had advocated for judicial reform. Right? My question to you is as follows. Since you feel so very strongly about the fact that the judiciary is fallible, of course, sometimes, who isn't? My question is, why did you not pursue the judicial accountability bill? This was an important reform as well. Why did you not pursue the judges' inquiry bill? Those reforms have fallen to the wayside. But the bill that gives you control over the judiciary has gained prominence. Now, we respect the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court. We stand by it, and all our spokespersons throughout the day have said so. We, however, did share your sentiment, as did everybody else, that judicial reform was required. There's no one on this panel who will argue otherwise. To tie it up and not look at why we failed is also an important series of introspection that you must do.
Okay, Dr. Singhvi, Dr. Singhvi, let me come across to you. You are here speaking in your independent capacity. What I just want to ask you, Dr. Singhvi, is this: do you share the view that the way in which this entire case has been argued in the Supreme Court was ineffectual?
Well, I wouldn't use those words. I want to make 2 points. See, first and foremost, and I have in a lighter vein predicted that many months ago, I think the institutional feeling was growing, and I found that feeling when I was chairing the Law and Parliamentary Personal Grievances Committee of Parliament as well. Institutionally, the feeling was growing that the judiciary, if I may use the phrase, having tasted blood since 1992, was institutionally, collectively, highly unwilling, unlikely, hesitant to give up this grand, great self-procreation power, which is humongous. It is absolutely unimaginable. Now that feeling, it may not be true fully, but certainly we in the profession, and I'm in that sense an insider and an outsider from all angles of these 2 or 3 organs, and I think that really meant that they really did enjoy this huge power, which is why some of the vitiating factors set in. Second point which you are making, that does it mean how it was argued? I won't use your word, but I would say that a large chunk of the arguments were in a very a confrontationist mode, and B, giving examples about individuals. Now in a constitutional matter where the text of the articles is involved, or the absence in the text of certain clauses is involved,
correct,
and the validity of these clauses involved, I don't think it matters much to say, look, Vishnu Som was a bad judge and Abhishek Singhvi was a good judge, or vice versa. I think that set of examples, etc., made it very anecdotal, very hortatory, and also to an extent confrontationist. I don't know how much it helped in a constitutional validity test.
Okay. All right. Dushyant Dave, one of the big concerns which the Supreme Court expressed today was the process through which eminent citizens would be selected. And while they questioned the manner in which the selection of these eminent citizens would take place, they also seem to raise questions on the presence of eminent citizens. Perhaps the suspicion is that these individuals might have an underlying bias. Do you believe that that was a bit of a judicial stretch? Why should anybody negatively perceive individuals who may well be very eminent in their own right?
Well, let us understand one thing, that I think this is the only country in the world where judges think that only judges can appoint judges. Everywhere in the world, the judges are appointed by, persons who are not judges. So, and there is nothing wrong about bringing eminent persons in the process of selection or a selection team to decide who should be appointed to the highest positions in judiciary. I had argued, and it was a simple solution to this problem of appointing or selecting the eminent persons, that the 3 wings of the government, the executive through Prime Minister, the legislature through leader of opposition, and the judiciary through the Chief Justice, all 3 of them were involved in selecting them. All that the Supreme Court had to do to ensure that there is complete independence was to have said that the 3 should be unanimous in selecting eminent persons. If this was done, I think it would have been democracy at its best play, and unfortunately judges missed this, and that's where I find the judgment is seriously flawed.
All right. Justice Mudgal, would you agree that one of the reasons why the judgment is seriously flawed is because of the methodology which had earlier been selected in the selection of, for example, eminent persons? Justice Mudgal.
No, I don't think, I would say the 2 eminent persons alter the balance, and that's why I would say, one, today if the eminent person comes in, he gives you a public voice, there's nothing wrong in that. That is not an interference, provided the judges have a majority, as I've said. But I'd like to say that 3 of the judges have clearly stated that there are flaws in the functioning of the collegium, and that is why they've listed the matter for suggestions, and some instances have also been given. And I entirely agree with that, yes, collegium system per se was a good system, but its functioning has left many issues which need to be addressed.
Vishnu, can I say something?
Yeah, Mr. Mittal, can Justice Mudgal just carry on with this point? I'll come to you in 10 seconds. Go ahead, Mr. Mudgal.
Yeah, what I'm
Justice
saying
Mudgal,
is,
go ahead, sir.
What I'm saying is that the collegium system, as pointed out by at least 3 of the judges, itself had flaws in functioning, and therefore there was a need to evolve a new system. I think I'd like to reiterate again that barring 2 eminent persons with 1 eminent person and primacy of the judicial component, I think this act would have been fine. And probably the Supreme Court could have struck down the provision which related to one of the eminent persons and sustained the rest of the act rather by reading it down.
Can I add to what Mr.
All right.
Mr.
Mr. Mittal, you had a point to make. Sudhanshu Mittal, go ahead, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a saying in Hindi, ये ज़ब्र भी देखा है, ये ज़ब्र भी देखा है तारीख़ के इतिहास में, लम्हों ने खता की थी, सदियों ने सजा पाई. It is one of those moments, it's one of those judgments which has huge bearing on the future of democracy in this country. And I think we ought to take this very, very seriously. This judgment undoes what the constitution framers of the constitution had provided for. That the law of land shall be framed by the parliament of this country or the legislative bodies of this country. The collegium system has not been framed by the parliament or the legislative assemblies. So the very existence of the collegium system is not something which is a part of the constitutional mechanism of making laws or making systems.
Mittal Sahab, may I say
court
something?
Can test the validity of,
Mittal Sahab,
so I think you have a very
I love
bad
the
habit
couplet
of
you quoted at the
interrupting.
beginning.
You have a very bad habit.
Okay,
I would have really appreciated. Mr. Khan, this is a very bad habit.
I apologize. Please go ahead,
Mr. Khan, this is a very bad habit. Please. So I would not join issues with Mr. Khan in trying to score a political capital on this issue, because this issue transcends beyond any politics. Is the future of democracy, is the future of the very structure as to how this government or how this country has to be governed.
If I may now, Mr. Mittal.
The will of people.
Okay.
If I may now, Mr. Mittal.
Okay, sir, just wait a moment. Mr. Khan, can you make a quick reply to that? I need to take a break before I return with this for your last comments. Mohammed Khan, quickly, go ahead.
Mr. Mittal began with a wonderful nazm, I would say. मैं अंग्रेजी में उसका एक जवाब देना चाहूँगा, sir. So success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. I think it's about time you started introspecting as to why we are here and what we can do. Hubris has been one long-standing enemy of this government. I think it's about time you broaden your base. When I was talking about building consensus, I was talking about building consensus with lawyers in the judiciary, not necessarily the opposition political parties, and that is why this point is not just political. If you remember when you brought about the amendments, and Singhvi Saab will remember, Mr. KTS Tulsi and Mr. K. Parasran, both senior advocates and long-standing very eminent personalities of the Supreme Court, wanted to challenge them. They mooted the idea of challenging them. This itself demonstrates that there wasn't much consensus over these amendments itself. What do you have to say to that, Mr. Mittal?
Mr. Khan, would you appreciate that when it comes to the judiciary versus the parliament or any of the political institutions, there's a natural struggle in terms of the primacy or the supremacy which the judiciary was wanted to exercise. You've named Mr. KTS Tulsi, you've named a few lawyers.
I would argue that the relationship is symbiotic rather than confrontational. It is confrontational because you make it so.
Sir, this is very irritating.
Mr. Khan, let him
sir,
make
this is very irritating. If you love your monologue, if you love your monologue, please go ahead and say, I have nothing to say in the matter. I thought there's a decency in having a decent debate.
Yes. No, just quickly make a sentence, Mr. Khan, can you not...
who represent that interest are naturally...
Yes. Mr. Mittal, quick sentence, sir, I need to take a break, yes.
Vishnu, I think he's very impatient, let him speak.
I'm quite eager to hear what you have to say. Please don't be offended. It is your day after all.
No, I don't think I'm here to perform before you. I'm here to say what I have to say, but if you have to interrupt me every second minute, I have nothing to say in the matter. Please go ahead.
All right, look, can I just ask both of you to just take pause for a few moments? We need to take a short break. I'm going to return with this, get your last views, including of Justice Ganguly and our other lawyers and judges. I'd like to take a short break and come back with more on a day which has been landmark in what some say is the beginning of a new battle between the judiciary and the executive. Stay tuned.